All right, Paige, here we are. The first Love Amped podcast episode in well over a year. Love Amped podcast is back, my friends. It's very exciting. Paige, how does it feel to be a part of the first podcast in a long time?
Very good. Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
Awesome. So a brief background into why we have Paige on here today is that I recently made a post on Instagram and Facebook about the reason why I quit psychedelics. And part of the reason and the part of that story is attending a class called Galactic Activation 1 through the Modern Mystery School and receiving a healing modality session called the Full Spirit Activation. And now there is a lot kind of behind those experiences, but I want to give some context as to why then Paige commented on that post and said, oh my gosh, I used to be so deep in the psychedelic game and also had breakthrough experiences through the Galactic Activation that were not experienced at all, like through psychedelics, like could not have been done. So Paige, tell me, how did this all come to be? And give us a little background here.
Yeah, so pretty much I had found psychedelics in my search for actually healing from PTSD, which I had been struggling with for about 10 to 15 years at the time. And I tried everything, more traditional therapy, meds, and none of that worked. And so I ended up getting kind of drawn into the psychedelic community. And, first I had gone to a symposium that Rick Doblin from MAPS was talking about for the MDMA therapy, which was amazing. And like the breakthrough treatment, right? And I did end up doing that, and it helped a little bit. And I kind of got further and further into the psychedelic community and treatment for many years, and it helped somewhat here and there. And then I had spent some time in the Midwest training with not only just the psychedelic therapy, but different with like Native American healers and Siberian healers and things, and started to really open up my world to alternative types of healing. And I moved back to Boston in 2015 at that time. And I had kind of put out to the universe, like, help me find people in Boston that are doing this type of healing work. I need more of this. Like there's some things in the alternative world that works that I need more of. And literally the next day I saw a flyer from my now guide, Alex Bynum, that was for like a life activation. And something in my soul was just like that. I'm like, you need that. You need to know this woman. You need to go. And so then I met her in 2015. A few months later in 2016, I received what was called a life activation. And I'm trained in engineering. Traditionally, I'm still back in school now, going back to engineering school. And so I was like, what's this like life activation thing? Like, but I don't know. My soul was just like, we need to do this. So I said, sure. And that was the first breakthrough for me and like profoundly changing my life. I had struggled up to that point with homelessness and like trauma and food scarcity for most of my life. And literally the day I got that life activation, my life kind of shredded and rebuilt in 2 weeks. And all of a sudden I went from living in one of the most dangerous parts of the city in a extremely toxic relationship to and like borderline homeless again and about to face eviction, to 2 weeks later living the nicest part of the city I'd ever lived in, the most amazing place I'd ever lived, safe, and I have not been homeless or starving since. So for me, I was like, okay, I've been working on these issues adamantly for years and had not been able to break them. And then I was like, hey, there's something here. Proceeded to like kind of keep going to these classes and these healings and was like and then mind you, I'm still heavily into psychedelic community, I'm like leading friends, and many people are coming to me to lead psychedelic trips and to go into trauma work. And I was pretty involved in the research aspect of it and the community. And I kind of kept fighting the like different lineage I worked in were heavily into medicine and heavily not, both sides. And I was pretty adamantly for psychedelics. And I'm like, but look at the research, but look at all these things. Mind you, it's really taxing on my body. I've also done ayahuasca. I've done like many plant medicines. There was always a cost to it, however, on my body. And I went back and forth with my guide on like, you know, plant medicines are a good thing, everything, whatnot. And she pushed back. And then same in 2018, I did the Empower Thyself class. And that was another big, huge changing point of my entire life of like really cutting out. It just kind of naturally pushed out what was no longer working in my life and brought in really good things. A few months later, I just had this, they were offering this thing called the Galactic Activation in Boston. And I was like, something in my soul was like, you need to go. You need to go. You need to figure out how to do it. You need to get there no matter what. You need this. And I went. I manifested the money out of nowhere. And I was like, I'm flying back to Boston. I'm going to do this. And at that point, too, I was still like heavily into cannabis. I had my medical card. I was, you know, very adamantly for all that. I started an edibles business for medical people and was making my own. Yeah. And I flew back for this class, and it was a 2-day class. It was kind of really weird. And I remember the instructor, Martina, was talking about how, you know, we hold all these like things in our mind, all these like shelves in our mind. We're holding all this stuff and carrying around. And at that point, my PTSD was like pretty good. But even on the best days, I was still like viewing my entire life through this film of my trauma. It was constantly almost like I was wearing glasses. It was constantly playing in front of me no matter what. And so when she said that, I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. Like, try that. Yeah, you, whatever. I can't remember. I tried everything, you name it, the EMDR, therapy, psychedelics, meditations, journeying.
All these things. Yes.
Nothing has actually ever done that. So like, yeah, okay, sure. I literally laughed. I was like, okay, sure, whatever. I kid you not. So at the actual activation at the last day of the class, you go and you lay down and you like integrate. And I like knocked out. I was hard asleep to the point I was like for like an hour and a half. I woke up an hour and a half later, like completely like what just happened to me. I like cried. And then I literally woke up the next morning. My PTSD is gone. It's been 3 years. It hasn't come back. I haven't had a flashback in 3 years. I used to have flashbacks hundreds a day. And I had night terrors every single night since I was 3 years old. Gone. That really blew my mind. And not only that, I couldn't smoke weed anymore. The next day after I tried, and one hit of weed and I was high for 10 days. At that day, and it was no longer enjoyable. I hated it. I had been smoking or eating edibles or consuming cannabis around the clock for 10 years. I had no tolerance at that point. I wasn't to the very next day, I couldn't smoke anymore. So at that point, I pretty much immediately got sober. I was using cannabis and these plant medicines to try to cope with my PTSD. It was always from a healing mindset. It was always from how do I heal this trauma? How to live a healthy life? And I had been skeptical about Mystery School, honestly, until Galactic Activation. Then I was like, okay, then I need to actually commit to whatever this is, because I've never experienced anything. And I banged down doors across the country and world to find it. So that's a little how I came to that.
Boom! It's a bomb drop of an experience. The amount of authority that you had in that field is huge. Gigantic. Like, we're talking working with the cream of the crop, the tip of the top of people and researchers doing this thing for probably over 20, 30, maybe 40 years in a way.
Yeah.
And these experiences, live activation, empower thyself, galactic activation, all the other things in between. There's nothing else like that out there.
No. And it doesn't tax your body the same way. I didn't have to recover for a week after, like I would other
Exactly.
sessions.
And it's almost like the integration that happens versus I know for myself, when I used to come back from ayahuasca experiences or people that I would see in my life, sometimes it's well, how do I even life now?
Yeah, no, 100%.
But it's now it's oh, the things just start coming into place. Of course, there's how do I now create the life that of what I know about myself now and who I am now leading forward. It's more of all right, the adventure begins versus oh no, but I needed to, but now I can't 3 hours a day, like meditate. Oh no.
That's what it feels like though. That's very much what it feels like.
Yes, exactly. And it's so funny that I'm guessing, so as you were saying, you would probably have some pushback from the people that you knew or community that you were like, I'm doing this thing now. I'm thinking I'm going to let go of the psychedelics, or maybe even before then. And like, oh, well, yeah, well, what is that? I don't even know. I don't know what that is. And then there's like this stuckness in the, like, the doubt and the questioning and the skepticism that I guess then they kind of like, they're like,
yeah, definitely. I mean, but to be fair, I did that. To be fair, I was that same person. I went when I was shown these healing modalities that was very like, oh, but like weed's the worst thing that you could do for yourself spiritually. I'm like, what? How can you say that? Like the science this, science that. But until you actually experience profound healing without those substances, it's a lot. I mean, that's the whole lineage of mystery school is about experience. And until I finally actually experienced it, I was like, oh, that's what you meant. And I remember actually like when I had gotten accepted actually into Healers Academy after that, I hadn't smoked in quite a while, and I was like, like I'm just having a celebratory dab. And for the that was the last time I was done after that, because I did. And I remember my guy talking to me about how like these substances create holes in your aura essentially. And it really opens you up to and your aura is there to protect you and support you. But like when you put holes in it, you open up these holes for energies that any energies can come in. And when I did that, I was finally at the point where I would like actually experience what she was just saying. And I was like, oh, this is terrifying. Actually, this is actually not what I want. And I really like experienced what I was like to feel those holes in the opening I was having in myself in a way that was not healthy or beneficial to me.
Right. And how did that then manifest in like the external world? Like when you would see that, you're like, I mean, of course there's the energetic component, but like how it's like, what would someone that looked at Paige and saw like, dang, okay, so that's what she means by holes in the aura. Holy smokes.
Yeah. I mean, like when I would have those experiences, I let people and circumstances into my life that where I was like, and I would fall back in patterns like, oh, I don't actually have to be like this or experience this life in this way. I don't have to actually entertain these kind of relationships or these kind of experiences anymore. And it really does like, and I also could feel it physically. Like when you open your aura up, you get hit like in a physical way too. I guess
totally. Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a beautiful way of saying it. It's like showing how it's like, well, it's like someone that hears like, okay, yeah, like negative energies can kind of start coming in your field. It's like, oh, that could be literally people, certain experiences. That's like someone might say, oh, well, but then maybe that's just a coincidence. But it's like once it's experienced, there's again this doubt that is totally normal. It's like when I talk about the doubt that like the people in your community must have had around you making these changes, like I want to make sure that I'm saying like that is normal. And like that I think if someone is experiencing doubt, someone even listening or watching this right now experiencing some doubt that this is real, like I want to make sure that you guys know that that's like normal and okay, and part of the process of like basically letting Magick just be in your life. Like it makes sense. It's okay. Like that's why we do these podcasts. That's why I make all these posts, is saying like, yo, yeah, these miracles are real. It's okay if you don't get it right now, but like here's another opportunity to maybe say, maybe that might be for me. Like maybe that might actually help my life. That's what we're doing. That's why we do this.
And it's also just like it was the opportunity given to me because I was full of doubt around it. I was very skeptical. I came from an engineering background. I came from a hard science background. I came from psychedelics have somewhat been helping me. Like I'm somewhat better than I used to be. Like, what do you mean? Like, how can you say these are not helpful? And then until you experience it. And the whole point is like, here are these opportunities. If you want to experience it, it's something that you can't really wrap your mind around rationally until you experience it. It's like, and then it's kind of like somebody telling you, I don't know, like this something about, like, there's so many things about this earth that don't make sense until you're like, well, yeah, until you experience it, right? And
Yeah,
I think that what you're
totally.
talking about around like the fruits of it too, there's so many people that even in the beginning when I would start talking about these healings I was doing were very skeptical. But when people look at my life now, they're like people I hadn't seen since before I found Mystery School I've been running into recently, and they're like, oh my God, like what happened to you? You're like, you know, and then you look
Yes.
so amazing. What's and that's the part. I think even my family was a little skeptical, and they're like, they don't even question at this point. I'm like, hey, I'm gonna come do these like healings at the house, like whatever. Like, okay, cool, whatever. Because they're like, clearly
Nice.
it worked, right? Because my life is not even recognizable from what it was 2 years ago, even,
Mhm.
you know. And I was adamantly working before. It wasn't from lack of trying. I was doing everything I could.
Yes, right.
So, anyways,
Yeah,
yeah.
the desire was there, and you've also Paige is also our wonderful second step initiate ritual master in the lineage
Yeah.
of King Solomon. And for you, Paige, on kind of like a high level, how has that also improved your life?
Ritual Master has profoundly altered how I live my life, how I take responsibility in my life, and the power I can wield in my life, to be honest. I started Ritual Master Path in June of 2021. So like a year and a half ago, I guess.
Minnesota.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And the first step was a little bit challenging for me because I really had to face a lot of darkness within myself that I didn't realize I was still carrying around and projecting onto the world around me. And once I was able to clear some of that, and really it pushed me to take responsibility, because with, like they say, with great power comes great responsibility, and you have no power to change anything in your life until you take responsibility for the fact you have created the life in front of you. And I had to really sit with that and be like, yeah, I have created this life in front of me. And now what do I want to do? Now that I accept that this is where I am, where do I want to be, and what action steps do I need to take to get there? And really holding that power in a different way. And when you do that, I mean, it's kind of wild. I just did that. It was a year and a half ago, because it was like, feels like I'm profoundly in a different life, in a different way of being, in a different level of stability, that I wish everyone had, like, can have access to this. Like, I absolutely, because it's in a way that I felt psychedelics. I turned to psychedelics a lot to destabilize things, to break down things, but psychedelics were really destabilizing in a way that I don't find in this lineage. Can break things down to rebuild things, but there's always a next level, and I don't find I ever go backwards. That's the other thing between this and others.
True.
And other lineages I worked with, like even ayahuasca was profound in some times, but there was always a like, okay, cool, and then you kind of go back. And then you kind of have to keep doing it to keep going, right? To keep, but this, when I've healed something, I have a new foundation, a solid foundation. And then from there, I can keep going and keep going. If that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And so with the Ritual Master Path being the warrior path and lineage, I don't know if, you've had this experience yourself, but in where I kind of come from, of course, I also have a background in the Mankind Project, doing the New Warrior Training Adventure, a men's initiation experience. And so this like warrior kind of like spark had been infused into me leading up to finding Ritual Master. And I know a bunch of, coaches and people that are doing their thing that really resonate with the warrior path, though when I've met them and, talk about the Ritual Master Path and all that stuff, there's, again, they're just like, well, I don't see how that would make me a better warrior. Like it's a hard thing to catch on to. And what would you say to the people out there that that they feel like connected to that warrior spirit, that spiritual warrior, that maybe even just the physical strength of, like, they feel like a warrior? It's like, why would Ritual Master improve that experience of being a warrior in this life?
Absolutely. Okay, so I feel like Ritual Master Path and Warrior Path is definitely around the first step, especially, I think, and then further on is like dealing with yourself, dealing with like the darkness within yourself. And they say the best way to deal with the darkness in the world is to deal with darkness within yourself. And when you really, really face yourself and therefore the world, because when you heal yourself, you heal the world. And it really is that micro macro experience. Then you have so much more compassion for the world. You have so much more strength in the world. Things can't get to you the same way. Because when you really face those tower moments of yourself and those dark parts of yourself, and in your life, in your immediate life, and then therefore you can look at, it's like, oh wow, I've really been doing that. Or like, I've really been putting myself in those situations, or I've really been creating that chaos over here and here and here. So of course, can I be mad at further outgoing to the world doing the same thing? And then when you learn how to have responsibility for, I did that, so how do I rectify that, or how do I change that? Then you can have more power in helping other people do that, and therefore spread out, and you have more power in the world. And it's a warrior from a different place. It's a warrior of like real grounded responsibility for all of your actions. Does that make sense?
Beautiful. I mean, that was beautifully said. That was like, oh my gosh, bravo. And what would you say to the people that would say to you, well, I already do that? How would this make that even better?
It's really good at showing you the parts you don't think you have, or the things that you can't see. It's really nice. Good at shining a light, like brighter the light, darker the shadow kind of thing. Like it physically brings in a higher vibration of light that you can sit there and be like, oh, I've already dealt with those things. Have you though?
Have you really?
It's like, oh, because I've been, before I found mystery school, I've been doing deep, hard levels of therapy and work on myself and diving as far into myself as I possibly could. And still, there's some moments where I'm like, oh crap, I was doing that. and like the thing is that you sit there and you can be upset at the world about things, but it's probably something within yourself.
Exactly. I love that. I love that. I truly believe that the Ritual Master Path is the greatest warrior training program that exists on the face of the planet. I don't think there is, like, I am open to being wrong about that. Like, I'm like, show me something. Show me any, you can show, but like, I don't think it's gonna be there. And like, I used to be someone that wouldn't even say something like that. I would say like, it's a very powerful thing. I think it's the best that I've found for myself. And it's like, I will still say that about it, but I will also say it's literally the best warrior training program in the freaking planet. Like spiritual development, there's no way. It's just no way.
I feel like mystery school, like the healer path, is very much like, I was talking to my guy about this the other day, and she said it's kind of like the hospital for the soul. And I feel like warrior path is like boot camp, like spiritual boot camp almost. It's very much like, I don't know. I'm very grateful for the ways it's kicked my ass, and because it allows me to step up stronger. It allows me to really be to own who I am and own my power in the world and own the God goddess here on the planet, you know?
Yeah, right. Awesome. And something that I say to people that have seen like videos or pictures or whatever posts by our dear Obsessiveness Dave, and they don't quite get it at first. They're like, well, what are you talking about? So you say so many great things. I'm like, he's saying things that just, that's great. But it's like, I say to them, you have not met Obsessiveness Dave until you've seen him speak in person. And why would you say that same thing, Paige?
The energy he holds, just being in his presence, it's almost triggering, but in the most amazing way, because he drops truth, and it ripples out through the room. And you're like, it hits you in such a different way. It was actually interesting. I started reading his book recently that he just published.
So good.
And it's interesting because I'm trying to read this. It's like I'm reading sections. I'm like, oh yeah, that's so great. It's so true, right? And then I'm like, how would somebody who's never met Obsessiveness Dave be able to interpret this, right? Because the way he's able to weave energy into it that's like really hits those parts of you that just are craving the light, but are also you're afraid to look at. And when you actually do turn and look at it, though, it's like, oh, yeah, I really needed that. And oh, there is so much freedom. And the way that he might say things that are triggering to people, or like, oh yeah, I guess that just makes sense. But like when you allow yourself to receive it, it's like, oh, that part of my soul actually really needed that. I needed that light. Thank you, kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Beautiful. Love that. I love that. And there's also been some people that it's like, why they call themselves obsessionists or the leaders in the group. What would you say makes what's the difference between, say, like an obsessionist or the classic, say, in the realm of like new age guru? Like, what are those differences?
Oh, yeah. So I mean, the term obsessionist means to know oneself. And it's somebody who has really gone to the lengths of truly knowing themselves and truly facing all those aspects of themselves in a way where they can hold space for others to do that too and push others to do that too. Versus I feel like a guru is more like, do what I say, and very like you're supposed to just abandon yourself to listen to what this external person says. And the new age guru thing is a lot around that. Like, abandon who you are, listen to this external thing, and this person tells you to do all these things. But an obsessionist who knows that oneself is pushing you to listen to you. And they're pushing you to explore yourself more. And it's actually really annoying sometimes along the path when you're like, just tell me the answer. Like, and they're like, it's always put back on you. And they're never going to disempower you. And like, I'm not going to make that decision for you. Here's information, do with it what you will, but here's, you know, they'll poke you and be like, hey, I think you're missing something over here. And obsessionists will poke you and be like, hey, like, and he'll look at where the cracks in your foundation are to help you heal those. But it's really around, but what is your listening to, learn how to listen to your God goddess self.
Beautiful, amazing, so true. And when we look at the new age realm that is truly out there, more than I used to even realize. Like once I joined the school that I started to hear that term used in like a negative way, like truly like, you know, of like, yo, you got to look out for that new age thing. And I'm like, what's going on? And then of course I realized I'm surrounded by it. Like, you know, once I fully accepted, like, that's what I'm sunken in. Like,
same.
Amazing. And so like, why was it important for you to have the discernment to understand and accept, like, new age teaches there's a lot of BS?
Yeah. A lot of it was spiritual bypassing. I realized there was a lot of that. Just feel good. Just don't look at this stuff. Just do whatever you need to be positive all the time. And instead of actually facing the real fundamental issues that are going on. And a lot of it too, I think when I got back from Ritual Master 1, and there's an agreement, if you're going to step on the warrior path, to be substance free. And when I got back and I experienced a great loss, I had a friend of mine pass right after. And I realized I had to, like, the entire community that I spent years building that were very into psychedelics and into like somewhat of like new age. I don't know if they would call themselves that, but like new age kind of healing. I had to really step away from that and realize, like, because a lot of them too can't be sober. And if you can't face life without the substances, are you really seeing life? Are you really actually addressing these things? And I think there was like a trail off of, and I was in the same boat. I was doing the same thing. I was like, oh, wow. And I kind of had to take a step back and be like, if I don't face life in an unfiltered way, I'm not actually seeing what's in front of me. I can't actually look at the reality of what I'm dealing with and how I can't actually change it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I nailed it. Love it. Love it. And it's been a, like, once it's, you know, been embraced for myself, like, I've had so much fun making fun of new age shit ever since. Oh my gosh. It's like one of my favorite things in the world. And it's also it could be a little triggering for some people, but it's so much fun. It's like, it's interesting.
It's interesting because I do look around people, I'm like, oh man, I used to do that. I used to, like, I thought that I was taking responsibility. I thought I was addressing things, and I looked around, I'm like, oh my gosh, I used to really turn an eye to all these things. I used to not take responsibility for things in my life. And I don't know. Yeah.
Amazing. And so, you know, with all of these healings, initiations, where you are right now, and of course, it's like, you're on the path, you're moving forward. Like, it's only going to get better from here. Like, incredible. you used to have these days where it's like hundreds of flashbacks. You said like over 100 flashbacks. So like this like debilitating like I'm sure like anxiety and depression and just being like in just like the midst of chaos. What's a day in the life now?
Yeah. Oh, so I've been actually reflecting on that too. Day in my life, I actually went back to finish my degree this last year. I'm finishing my mechanical engineering degree at Northeastern University. I am also in advanced Kabbalah for Kabbalists, which I recommend to everyone to do Kabbalah. I have actually never found a single system on this planet, and again, I've tried many, 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 to profoundly change your life in that short amount of time. I live an amazing apartment by the beach in Massachusetts. I get up, I do a bunch of my energy balancing for the day, and I really take a couple hours to really center myself and meal prep, and I go to school and I interact with people, and I don't even, there's days and weeks straight where I don't even think about my trauma anymore, which tell 2018 me that even, you know, like yeah. I mean, there was a point where my flashbacks were literally back to back, just like cascaded them. The last days, I think the longest I was like 10 days straight without a break, like literally didn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't completely inundated with flashbacks and night terrors and trauma. And I didn't have a life. I mean, I spent most of my 20s. I didn't have a life. I was barely surviving at best, you know, to a place where I can't even say I have my life back, because I don't know if I ever really had like truly living, but I have a way where I feel stillness in myself in a way that I never experienced. I feel a safety in my being and in relationships and in life, and a groundedness that I never had before. And you know, I have my clinical trauma specialist certification and that I did last year, and I remember learning in it that like if someone in my place that has that severe of trauma, which is one of the more severe ends of the spectrum of PTSD, like can reach where I am today, it's possible for anyone, I think. And if this can reach to the people that are going through that, just know it's possible. To know it's possible to actually truly fundamentally heal PTSD. It's possible to have a life that you want to wake up to. Like I was like surviving every second to a place where I'm like, I love waking up. I genuinely feel happy with where I am and who I am. And I'm still growing. I'm still, you know, continuing on. But that is absolutely possible.
Beautiful. I so relate to so much of what you're saying, and especially that experience of waking up. I think post RM1, that's the thing that I mentioned to a lot of people, is I would say, I wake up and my mind is just so clear. And it's like the default, instead of like maybe like going into fear or like, oh, I should do enough things that I, you know, feel good today kind of a thing. I'm just like, oh, another day. How great is that? Amazing. Like,
yeah, I remember I was talking to somebody recently. For me, it's the fact that like I genuinely, I remember like I used to make decisions back when I was younger of like, if I live today, great. If I die, great. Like I was very like, whatever, I'm here to just have an experience, whatever happens, whatever. Right. A little bit too much of the YOLO thing. And I actually live in a place now that I value my life. I genuinely want to be alive. And I think that's hard for a lot of people to think, and when you look in the state of the world, but it really is what you create of it. And it really is, yes, there's things in the world that need to be changed, but it starts by changing your life so you're in a place that you can help. And I genuinely value my life and treat my life in a way where I make decisions that will like benefit myself and my community. I make decisions from a place that I want to protect and love and support my life, versus just survive it, versus just fuck it mentality, right? I was very much like, and I think that's what really profoundly has, it wasn't just kind of get through. It's like, I actually want to protect and support and grow my life.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Gosh, Paige, people's minds are just sufficiently blown at this point. I think our beautiful audience would say is like She goes, yes, Paige. Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
And is there, before we leave, before we depart for the day, what are some other things that you think people should know? Is there anything else?
That allow your mind to be blown, allow your, like, to, when you know, these things, these offerings and these healings and these classes are available to anyone, luckily, gratefully, but like, allow the doubt to be there, and also give yourself an opportunity, because, you know, as if whatever you want to do with your life, commit to it. Like for me, it was healing. It was like, I want to be on this planet, and I'm unwilling to do it the way I was unwilling to continue doing the next 7 years in that state of survival. So what do I need? And I was like willing to try anything. And when I tried this and I allowed my mind to be blown, I allowed my mind to let go of the trying to figure it out for a second. I opened up potential for actually what I really wanted to. And the one thing I can say to, again, is, as cliche as it might be, if there's a will, there's a way. If you want that thing in your life, if you want that, well, for me, it was healing. For me, it was like, I want this life. I want this life where I feel stable and secure and safe and whatever. And that was my, I'm not going to stop till I get it. And whether it's the job or the career or the money or whatever it is for you, if you really want it, there absolutely is a way to get it, and don't stop till you do, I guess. And there's tools out there to create it that make it a lot easier.
Absolutely. Wow. Paige, thank you so much for joining us today. This is huge. This is a big milestone for this podcast to come back online in this new iteration. It was like, it was time. There was this period of time where it was like kind of like hibernation of, there was so many changes going on in my life. And I was like, who would I even start bringing onto this podcast? And now it's so much clearer of, this is how we talk about the magic. This is how I talk about previous, kind of topics in my life that people, they understood. They like, at this point that people understood, Seth, MDMA, psychedelics. Yes. Like progression, like love yourself. But it's like, now we're doing it a little differently. And it's even better this time.
I love that. And it's also, you've been going through all this change as well. And it's, I think that sometimes you need that hibernation to like rebirth yourself.
Exactly. And anyone out there listening that's like, I want to learn more about the Modern Mystery School. What's about this life activation? What's about this empower thyself? Look at this ritual master path. What is this? You go to modernmysteryschool.com. I think it's maybe Modern Mystery School International, INT.
INT.
Or you can also look up Paige and I's Facebook pages or our Instagram pages or whatever, because we can, if you're not in our area, sometimes we can fly to you or we can send you to someone else. Like, that's the beauty of this lineage, is that there's people worldwide ready to assist and, help you build a life that is just absolutely magical and unbelievably fantastic.
Yeah. If you have that vision in your mind of the life you want, it's there for a reason. And it's absolutely possible for you. And I just want to say that it's absolutely possible.
Oh, yes, that's what I'm talking about. Till next time, everyone. Love yourselves out there.